Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Florida is a law and order state. We take holding criminals accountable very seriously. And part of it is having strong policies at the state level, which we've done and we've been very proud of. But quite frankly, a lot of the heavy lifting, most of the heavy lifting, are the folks who are actually on the ground. And Florida has 67 counties. Each now has an elected sheriff. And I would say that there's no state that has a better collection of sheriffs than the free state of Florida. Now, if you were to go down into central Florida in Polk County, which is the home of Publix and is in between Disney World and Tampa, they will tell you that their sheriff, Grady Judd, isn't just leading the charge in Polk County or even for the state of Florida. They will tell you he is America's sheriff. Anytime you hear these stories about some Florida man committing some stupid criminal act and getting nailed for it, chances are it's Sheriff Grady Judd down in Polk County who is doing that. Sheriff Judd's also worked very closely with the state of Florida on enforcing laws against illegal immigration. The beginning of the year, we saw an opportunity with President Trump taking office to say all state and local law enforcement need to be in this fight. And even ICE has put out a map of all the local jurisdictions that have agreements with ICE for immigration enforcement. The entire state of Florida is covered with dots. Most of the rest of the country has very little, if any, even in some very red states. And the results have been tremendous in the state of Florida as a result of that. And of course, we now sit here with a crime at a 50-year low. None of that happens by accident. It requires good folks doing good things. And we've got a great sheriff here with us today, Grady Judd. So welcome to Tallahassee.
Governor, thank you very much for allowing me to be with you today.
So I saw a blurb this weekend. There was a suspect, I guess he was being attacked by an alligator and then somehow tried to grab a deputy's firearms and then was in her. So that happened in Polk County, of course, and with your guys. So what happened on that incident?
Well, there's some things you can't just make up, and you can't make this up. This guy starts out by going to a racetrack gas station on Highway 37 in Lakeland, and he was out of his mind. And he's telling them, I need to call my son. Well, he doesn't even have a son. So, of course, they dial 911. Deputies there in 3 or 4 minutes, and he's already fled. So they look and they can't find him. So the deputies go on to answering other calls, and about 40 minutes later, they say, hey, there's this dude in the lake, and this lake is full of alligators. And another caller says, this alligator is really, really close to this guy. He's out of his mind. Well, he has jumped into this lake, and it's a nice-sized lake. It's not massive, but it's acres, and he's swimming across it. And as he's coming across the lake, he gets out on the other side, picks up a brick, picks up a pair of shears, and is charging through the neighborhood. Now, there's more 911 calls. Hey, this guy's out of his mind. Our 2 deputies arrive, and sure enough, he's trying to break the window out of a truck in a neighborhood. And the deputies challenge him, and he comes at them with the shears. Well, they try to tase him and de-escalate. And next thing we know is he runs around as he's chopping, and they're standing back trying to calm him down. And he jumps into the right passenger seat of the deputy's vehicle and is trying to get the rifle out. And of course, at that point in time, we had to shoot him. We shot him a lot, and we had to stop the threat. He was out of control. Now, we go back and look, and he's got this arrest record. It's easy for me to remember it. Meth arrest, meth arrest, meth arrest, meth arrest, meth arrest. But on this particular morning, I guess he was out of meth, Governor. He was huffing paint off of a piece of cardboard in front of the racetrack. So at the end of the day, he won't be back to jail. And and it's his own fault. I mean, he threatened the deputies. And one of our witnesses, God love our witnesses in Polk County, we interviewed her, and she had one criticism of the deputies. She said, well, they waited way too long before they shot him.
That sounds in character for Polk County. Now, you have probably seen a lot because you got into law enforcement. You were still a teenager, right?
I was 18 years old. I wanted to be in law enforcement all of my life. In fact, when I went down there, Governor, they weren't even going to hire me. They said, look, kid, we had an 18-year-old here. And he didn't work out. He acted like he was a teenager. So I worked at the ambulance, went to school nights and weekends over at Polk Community College. So I would hang out on my nights off in the communications center. They would let me do that. And one morning, the captain came in after about a month and said, well, kid, how long are you going to come down here? And I said, well, till you hire me. I'm going to be the sheriff one day and I need to get started. And 1 month after graduating from high school, they hired me in communications.
Wow. And so are you in your fifth decade now, fourth or fifth decade?
Oh, yes. I'm starting my 21st year as sheriff, my 6th term in office, and July the 21st will be 53 years.
Wow. Well, one of the things that you've been known for, and you've done it with press conferences that we've done together, but also your standard operating procedure when you roll out big bus is the use of visual aids. And so if you watch a Grady Judd press conference, he's not just mouthing, he will show a picture of the criminal, or he'll show a picture of what they're doing. And it's very effective. And so we thought we would do some of that here today. So I've got some greatest hits here for Grady Judd. So I'm going to do the quote, and then you can kind of fill us in on the background. So I think this quote was, the media was mad that your deputies, I guess, maybe engaged a lot. And so Grady Judd's response was, why did they shoot so much? That's all the bullets we had, or we would have shot them even more. So do you remember this incident?
I remember it very well. In fact, that's a quote, Governor, that kind of put me on the map. On this particular day, we did a simple traffic stop for speeding, and this guy didn't have a driver's license. So the deputies told him, I'm sorry, sir, you don't have a driver's license. Why don't you have a driver's license? And he jumped and ran into the woods. So we called for K-9. Our K-9 deputy got there. So we have the deputy and we have the K-9 deputy, and they go in as a team. Well, the guy hides. He shoots and kills the K-9, shoots and kills the K-9 deputy, shoots the backup deputy. Now we're calling, obviously, for lots of help. Lakeland police officers show up next to help us, and he shoots at 2 of them. Thank God he missed them. So we circle this area. And ultimately, we found him the next morning, and he points the dead deputy's gun, which he took, at a SWAT team. And we shot him. We shot him a lot. We shot him so much you could read the New York Times newspaper through him. And they asked me, one of the newspaper folks said, that's the first one to ask, well, we got a report that you shot him 68 times. And I go, here was a complete statement. I said, absolutely. I guess we ran out of bullets. And he laughed. He said, I'm going to write that. I said, well, write this. He'd already shot and killed a K-9, shot and killed a K-9 deputy, shot a backup deputy, shot at 2 police officers, and pointed a gun at a SWAT team. What did he think was going to happen to him?
Yeah, no, exactly. All right, so we got another one, and I think this was a little piece of friendly advice. So tell us about the background on this. Just chill out, drink a 7-Up, eat a moon pie, and quit murdering people.
I was asked a lot about that quote. They said, how in the world did you make that up? And I said, it just came to me right in the middle of the press conference, which scares my director of communications to death. And by the way, I got home that night. My wife said, it's not drink a 7-Up. It's drink a RC Cola.
There you go.
So I said, yeah, but I couldn't remember if they still had RC Colas anymore. She said, you never go to the grocery store. You don't know. But anyway, what happened, we had a spate of murders, and our crime rate's at a 53-year low. We just don't allow crime in Polk County. But we had 2 or 3 in a row, and we had this out-of-control shooting. And my message to the gangbangers, because it was 2 gangs shooting back and forth at each other, just chill out, drink a 7-Up, eat a moon pie, quit murdering people. And the message was that, loud and clear to the gangbangers. Ultimately, we arrested the people involved, and guess what? All the murders stopped between the competing gangs.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, now we have this one, and I think this is about one of the people that you had detained. But given the circumstances in New York City, maybe the county jail in Polk County is better than New York City. It's certainly safer than New York City. So what was the context of that one?
Yeah, we had an event and someone was being critical of us arresting so many people. And if you remember back, not so long ago, there was two New York City police officers that they were beat down in the subway by a gang. Well, the New York Police Department worked very well and caught, I think, 3 or 4 of them. Well, they took them to jail. And the judge released them because they've got no bail jail. You know, they don't want to hurt the feelings of those poor criminals up in New York City. And so that started me saying, well, we don't want in Polk County or Florida what they have there. And it's not safe in New York City. In fact, it's safer here in Polk County and it's safer in my jail than it is any place in New York City. And that's because of the leadership. You see, they don't have any leadership in New York. Right. They're not like Florida, where we got Ron DeSantis as the governor, where we keep people safe, where people thrive. The difference is the leadership. You provide leadership, they don't provide any in New York.
And even more than that, I mean, they handcuff law enforcement's hands.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're proud to stand with law enforcement, but I mean, if you don't want to do that, at least be neutral. They try to kneecap the folks that are doing that. Okay. What's the context of this? They don't know beans from buttermilk about what's happening in the community. Who was that? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, that was another issue where I got asked a silly question about why we were putting people in lockup. And someone had complained to the news media about, well, there's no need to arrest everybody. And I said, well, we're not arresting everybody. We're arresting the criminals. But beside that, they don't know beans or buttermilk about what's going on in the community. They're just running their gator. And that's what we see often, Governor. People who are the loudest in their mouth and their talk do the least to help the community. And as a result, when I'm doing press conferences, I simply tell them the truth, you know, and that has worked well for me. It's, you know, I'm transparent. What you see is what you get.
And you just got reelected in November of 24. And what was the spread on that one?
I got almost 84% of the vote.
So some of the naysayers are not exactly represented in Polk. And I think, I mean, you and I have talked about it because I'll have people to this day will say, you know, I moved to Florida because of you and what you're doing in Florida. But in Polk County, you know, some people will say, you know, the governor was part of it, but people will say that they saw Grady Judd and moved to Polk for that as well.
Do you know, I hear that every time I do a speech. And if you're going to work every day in the state of Florida and you're safe and you feel safe and you've got kids, you're not paying attention to the people that are moving in. So we have retirement communities and new neighborhoods. We've added 135,000 people to our county in just the last 5 years. I mean, that's a city the size of Winter Haven, Lakeland, and Dundee. I will go to these communities and I'll say, raise your hand if you've moved here in the last 5 years. And 20 to 40% of these retirement communities have just moved here. And then I go, why did you move here? And they say every time on cue, just like we had planned it, Governor Ron DeSantis and Sheriff Grady Judd.
Well, it's interesting because you're born and raised in Polk County, and there's now over 800,000 people in the county. And I would imagine when you were a kid, it was probably a small fraction of that. So you've seen a lot of change over the course of your life in Polk.
I really have. When I grew up, Polk County was a small country county. And then a magic thing happened while I was in high school. Disney arrived, and we started seeing the population, but it coalesced around the Orlando metro area. But we saw the residuals of some of the criminals wanting to leak over into this rural area. But as the state grew and as Central Florida grew, people go, hey, you know, we can live in Polk County where the land's cheaper, we can build more house, and it's only a 30-minute drive over into Orlando or Tampa. So we ended up being a bedroom community for Tampa and Orlando. And it's funny, as we've grown, I go to meetings, professional police chiefs, sheriffs meetings, and they talk about the media. And I go, well, you got to learn to get along with the media. Well, I said, look, in Polk County, I've got 2 ABCs, 2 CBS, 2 NBCs. I've got 2 Foxes. I've got 2 of everything because I get an Orlando market and a Tampa market. Just quit playing dumb with the community and the media and tell it all, brothers and sisters, tell it all. And when you're transparent and you tell them the truth and you tell them right up front everything you can tell them, and if there's something about an investigation you can't tell them why you can't tell them. You can't believe how the media relationships improved immediately with our sheriff's office when we took a different media view.
Yeah. So looking at kind of the state as a whole, you've obviously been aligned with our administration on law and order issues. But I mean, when I became governor, there was a push to go soft on bail here. There was a push to go soft on, California, you can steal $999. There were bills filed in the legislature that wanted to set the threshold at $1,300 to where basically retail theft would be rampant. There were bills filed in the legislature that wanted to have early release of felons. And we've beat all that back. I know locally in Miami-Dade, they tried to do a kind of a no cash bail. We squashed that. But can you talk about the importance of policy? Because I think Floridians, they view Florida as safe. A lot of people that move here have been there. But it isn't like there aren't folks that want to turn the policy in the direction of a California or a New York. And even, unfortunately, people that wear a Republican Party label.
Well, first, when you were elected, I remember a press conference I was watching on the evening news because they were trying to push us left. And they were saying, Governor, are we going to do some reform, criminal justice reform, make this better? Are we going to do away with minimum mandatories? And I'm holding my breath, right? Because this is a brand new governor who I've met on the campaign trail. And you looked him in the eye and go, I believe in truth and sentencing. And I went, thank you, Jesus. We have the governor we need. And, Governor, I've been in this business long enough. When I got into law enforcement, the felons owned Florida. And during the 70s and 80s, we were telling the legislators and the different governors, listen, it's dangerous here. It's dangerous here. We arrest somebody for armed robbery with a firearm. They give him 10 years, and in 20 months, we're arresting him again. And then a magic thing happened. And it was in the late 80s when Europe gave a travel warning about vacationing in Florida, that it wasn't safe, that like 17 tourists had been killed. And I'm thinking to myself, 17 tourists being killed is horrible. But they've been slaying people from Florida for the 2 decades I've been in actively in law enforcement. But at that time, the legislature created 1020 life, minimum mandatory sentencing, 85% sentencing. They were letting people out at 25, 30% of their sentencing. And as a result of that, immediately crime fell precipitously. So crime's been low. And all of a sudden, we get legislators that want to loosen all of that up. It would have happened if it hadn't have been for you and your leadership. And as a result, you have shown, hey, when we did not cave to this quote unquote new criminal justice reform, when we didn't cave, our crime rate stayed down. California never had a conservative system. Texas started leaking. New York fell apart. And crime went up exponentially there. So it's all about leadership. It's who you elect as your governor in your legislative body, whoever you elect to the city commissions and the county commission, who you elect to prosecute. If you've got a prosecutor that doesn't prosecute, we can arrest till the cows come home and it doesn't do any good. But at the end of the day, the tone starts in this office with you. And as a result, there are people alive and we flourish. I just saw a report about our tourism last year was off the charts, but that's because it's safe to come here.
Yeah, you look at something like a mandatory minimum and people say, well, they can point to instances in which maybe someone should have gotten a little bit less. And I'm not saying that never happens, but the flip side, if you didn't have it, liberal judges would let people off with a slap on the wrist. And so if you had a conservative judge, they'd throw the book at you, but a liberal judge would end up basically turning you back out. And so it provides parity as best as you can with these criminal activities. And then like having people serve their sentence, there are people that will commit a crime that really, maybe made a bad decision and maybe they learn their lesson and do that. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but most of the people you deal with will keep committing crimes. So why would you want to put them back on the street? The goal is to keep them off the street so they can't victimize any more people.
No, you're exactly right. I think about the legislators and the judges and the prosecutors that don't prosecute. Why do you think more of the people who don't pay taxes, who don't vote, who don't take care of their kids? Why do you want to put those people who are dangerous to society back to victimize people rather than keep the people who do pay taxes, who do vote, who do take care of their children safe? I don't understand that. And when I ask that of what I call the super liberal, not one of them's been able to give me an answer about that.
So we have led the charge in Florida on immigration enforcement. We have all 67 counties have agreements with ICE. A lot of the municipalities now, I think of the country as a whole, of all the law enforcement agencies that have agreements with ICE, more than half are in Florida alone. And so you have been involved in this fight. You guys have gotten a lot of bad people off the street. Some of these illegal aliens, if we had law enforcement at the federal level the last 4 years, wouldn't have even been in our country, and they were intentionally put back into circulation. So can you talk about the types of folks that have been involved in some of these operations? The media acts like that these are innocent people, but I know they're gang members. I know they're criminals. I know they're people that have been involved with the law and then obviously are here illegally to boot.
Certainly. First and foremost, when you look at the illegal immigration across the southern border, there are people that are coming across that border simply to do better for their family. But understand, let me underscore, that first off, they're violating the federal law too. But that's not what's really going on. The cartel is moving great volumes of people here illegally in one area to take up all the police resources, while then they move their methamphetamine and their fentanyl and their human traffickers over here. So the reality of it is there are people that have died, about 250,000 for overdoses of fentanyl in the last 4 years. Think about that for a minute. What if we had 250,000 people die at the hands of the police in the last 4 years? What if we had 250,000 people die as a result of decisions made by any of the governors? There would be this outrage about, democracy's falling apart, but yet they're allowing people to come across with fentanyl and kill 250,000 people. So we have been working very hard. During the last administration, the Biden administration, the floodgates were open, and we were catching people for state violations, and they just weren't doing anything. They would let them go, let them go, let them go. And this is people that are trafficking in meth, trafficking in fentanyl, trafficking in human beings. And we saw the cartels of Mexico alive and well flooding us with crime in this country. And then we saw states such as California embracing those criminals and Illinois embracing those criminals. When we saw murders happen here, straight up murders, gang robberies. We had one Venezuelan group that came through Central Florida, and they were targeting store owners, restaurant owners, and they were targeting them. This is frightening. Doing surveillance photographs, going in the store, determining who owned the mom and pop, following them to their homes. They had systems to block their security systems at home. They were breaking in and stealing thousands and hundreds of thousands. One house alone in my community suffered a $350,000 theft by illegal immigrants from Venezuela as they came into this country. We caught them, by the way, because my detectives are the very best, and we worked with our colleagues. But my point is, they should not have been here if the Biden administration hadn't just opened the floodgates.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why when you talk to the victims of illegal alien crime, it's not that that crime is worse than a crime committed by a native born, but the reality is if some law-abiding citizen decides they're going to go commit a crime, if you can stop it, you stop it when it's happening, but the way we handle that is to hold them accountable or whatnot. But they had a right to be here as an American citizen, and you hope people wouldn't make those choices. And if they make the choice, you hope you would be able to interdict as law enforcement or a citizen exercising, their right to self-defense. But the illegal alien, any victim by definition, should not have happened had the federal government done its job and kept them out of the country or had deported them when they had an opportunity. So now we're in the kind of post-Biden with President Trump's administration. And I know that there is a real concerted effort to turn the tide on that. But I also know that Biden really decimated the resources of ICE and in terms of interior enforcement. So we're working with them to try to supplement as best we can. But what are you seeing on the ground in terms of ICE's capacity right now? Is it where it needs to be? Are they building, or what do you see that in the future?
Well, Governor, let me back up one step. And when they said that illegals coming in this country weren't committing crime at any greater percentage than the Americans are that were committing crime, right? And I want to say, well, gag me with a tablespoon. If they weren't here, they would be committing zero crime, right? So as we move forward, you call for a special session. We've got some beautiful laws, and we have the ability to help the federal government. But the federal government, as you said, was decimated. So I'll give you this last weekend. We had in custody 9 people that were in this country illegally. 9. It was in the middle of the night. We call ICE, and I want to underscore the ICE supervisors and the agents on the ground are really, really working hard. And they said, hey, guys, we don't have anybody. We don't have any place to put them, and we don't have anybody to come out and process them tonight. Get all the detailed information on them and send it to us. And we said, well, how about we drive them to you? And they go, we don't have anybody to process them if you bring them to us. So then we said, well, how about this one where there's a deportation warrant? And they said, yeah, well, she's checking in Orlando. We know where she is. We can get her. There's no place to put her tonight. That was one night. The next night, we had another one, and another single lady. And we got whoever the ICE supervisor was, super guy, answers the phone in the middle of the night and go, hey, talked to my sergeant, said, hey, Sarge, I'd like to help you. I don't have any place to put a female tonight. So the next day we get another one where we stop a car in the evening, the guy's DUI. So while we're dealing with the DUI, this passenger gets out of the car. And the deputy's saying, get back in the car, get back in the car. He comes around the car and bum rushes and knocks our deputy off of the car, and then the car takes off. Well, then deputy runs him down. He's here illegally. They put a hold on him because we had state charges and we had a place to put him. Oh, we caught the other guy too, and we charged him with DUI, resisting arrest, fleeing to elude. He was a U.S. citizen, but the guy that attacked us wasn't even supposed to be in this country. The problem is not the ICE agents. There's not enough of them, and they don't have any place to put these folks. We can overwhelm them and are overwhelming them with our normal police work as we go through the day. It is not once a week, once a month, we find somebody here illegally that's committing crime. It's every day. And this one lady I'm telling you about where there's no place to put her, she makes bond at the jail before they can get an ICE hold on her. And by law, we can't keep her any longer. So what we have all said, and I know that you've talked to the president, we've got to get the president to get that big black marker out and do an executive order and saying, hey guys, we can't keep doing the same old thing, the same old way, and expect different results at ICE. So we in the state of Florida can absolutely, starting with the worst first, as the president said, and we're so thankful that you provided with the legislature great legislation. We can get these folks that are committing crime and here illegally out as soon as somebody will either provide capacity, or governor, if they'll just allow you to provide capacity. You've given them a robust plan through your staff that says, look, we can put it together. We'll get them off of the street so they're not committing crime. They've got to change at the federal level.
Yeah, I think the plan that we did was through our Division of Emergency Management, and we know how to handle natural disasters and emergency response, and that's typically the hurricane stuff, which is obviously very important in Florida, and hopefully, knock on wood, we get a respite this season. But it's also been employed to rescue people from Israel, evacuate Americans from Haiti, whole host of reasons, and so we have an ability to stand up detention space very quickly. We could put it, in Polk. We could put it in Hillsborough. We could put it in Brevard. There's a lot of places you can do it and then really supplement. So we're waiting on approval for that. I think if we get it, that would solve that issue. But you cannot have, if your policy is mass deportation, then you can't be turning away illegal aliens who were here, especially the ones that have committed criminal offenses. Got to have the capacity to do it. So we're ready to help with that, and I know you guys will be ready to help with that. We have some funding, but we also think the federal government can reimburse some of that. So that's good, and I know there's going to be more that happens on there. So you are obviously very much in the public eye. You're doing not just immigration. You're busting a lot of child predators in Central Florida, a lot of drug traffickers, obviously people that are committing homicides, and there's a lot going on when you have a community that's over 800,000, especially where you are in the I-4 corridor. But you also have to take some time to do stuff other than that. And so what is Sheriff Grady Judd doing if you have a Saturday to be able to not have anything on the calendar?
Well, I was asked, what is your hobby? Well, my hobby is work. I really like that. But beside that, I love landscape and wildlife photography. A Saturday morning, early in the morning, I like to be out in the swamps of Florida, because you ride by a swamp on a main road and you go, oh, there's a Florida swamp. But when you go into that swamp and you sit down, it is alive. It is alive with the most awesome plants and birds and wild animals. And I like to capture and photograph that. But I've got to tell you a story about that. I went out one afternoon. A friend of mine had this 18,000 acre spread. And I said, hey, I would love to come out there, park my old Jeep, get my camera and go down in the swamps and the bay heads and photograph. He said, Grady, help yourself. So I went down there late one afternoon, and I had my camera equipment, and I had me a brand new GPS so I could get way into the swamp and find my way out. So I get way into the swamp, and I'm sitting there and I'm photographing and I'm waiting for wild animals to come by, and I get to playing with my brand new GPS, and I erase my pathway in. And I went, oh my goodness, I'm in the middle of this swamp. The sun is beginning to set, and I have no idea where I am, and I have just messed up my directions out of here. Well, thankfully, I was a Boy Scout at one time, and I made my way to a cross fencing and found my way out about an hour later. But, it's pretty intimidating when you get back in deep in these Florida forests. But I got some good pictures that day, and that's what I really, really like to do. But, and I like to hunt a little bit. But, Governor, once you've hunted armed men long enough, everything else is not exciting.
Yes. So it's interesting because for people who don't know, Polk County, Central Florida, it's not on the coast, but you guys have a lot of fresh water. And so, I mean, you must have alligators everywhere.
We've got 550 lakes in the county. And I tell folks, if there's a mud puddle, there's an alligator in it. I like to gator hunt. And I must tell you, you have to be careful gator hunting. You have to remember the number one rule. The number one rule is that gator will bite you if you get your hands or your feet in his mouth. And when I first started gator hunting, I learned a very, very valuable lesson too. We had this bang stick, and with these FWC permits, I don't want you boys after us. We got to all obey the law. So we pull this gator up, and I pull him up. It's my turn to pull up. The guy hits him with a bang stick, and the bang stick doesn't go off. Well, we let him back down in the water because you have to keep him under the water, and they fixed the bang stick, and I pull the gator back up. They hit the gator in the head, and the bang stick doesn't go off. Now, this happens like 5 times. And I go, man, we got to fix this bang stick because this gator is now angry. What I didn't know, he had pulled us close enough to the shore to where he could touch bottom whenever I pulled him up. So the next time I pulled him up, he took his tail and he launched straight up in my face. Now, we didn't get a chance to bang stick him, but he was so close to me, Governor, I had to reach out and shove him back into the water to keep him from getting in the boat with us.
Wow.
So at the end of the day, we finally got the bang stick to work. But the lesson is this. When you have a gator on the line and you're in a boat, get in deep water, because if that rascal can get to the ground, he'll get in the boat with you.
Yeah, no, they're very powerful. I'm actually... Florida, it's kind of a delicacy. They'll have like the fried gator tail. I like it. Have you ever had it, and do you like it? Or
oh
what?
My goodness, yes, sir. The gator tail is really, really, really good. But if you want to know what's really, really, really better than that, the jowls.
Okay.
Now the jowls are even better than the tail. And you've got to know how to you've got to first off know how to dress it out, and then you've got to know how to prepare it. But fried gator is absolutely out of this world.
So speaking of gators, I think most people kind of know that there's different rivalries in Florida. We're up in Tallahassee, so pretty much Tallahassee over to the Panhandle is FSU country. If you go down to Southeast Florida, that's hurricane country. I would say the rest of Florida, it is a mix, but I would say the predominant is Florida Gators. And so you're a Gator fan, and I remember you and I were at the game against Miami to open the season last year for football. That didn't turn out well for the Gators. They did play well towards the end of the year. They did win the national championship in basketball, and I will say that the best player on the team, and maybe the best player in Florida history, Walter Clayton Jr., is from your county, Polk County, in Lake Wales. And so that was pretty interesting to see, and being at that game was great. But you look forward to this year coming up in football. I think a lot of people have high expectations for Florida to have its best year in a while. What are your thoughts on that?
Do you know, I am a rabid Gator fan. And I was so excited. I mean, we're watching our man, and we win it all in basketball. And the most remarkable thing about the basketball season, Governor, was they knew how to finish a game. You know, they could be down and finish a game, but that's Walter. So in football this year, I'm all excited about that. I want us to do well. It's been a long time since we won it all, but it's a different universe now that all the money's flowing to the college players. And I think as NCAA's got to kind of get a better grip on the money aspect. But right now, it's almost NFL light, if you will. But I'm feeling good. We had a pretty good recruiting season, and I'm hoping for the best.
Well, my kids are fans of your press conferences and stuff, but I will not let them know you're a Gator fan because they are diehard Florida State fans, having grown up in Tallahassee and everything. It's interesting. When I was growing up, when I was in high school, so I'm in Dunedin High School in the Tampa Bay area. You know, I knew kids from high school who were then at University of Florida. So I went to games when I was in high school.
Sure.
And that was the era when Spurrier was the coach. You had Danny Werfel won the Heisman. They beat Peyton Manning all 4 years, Tennessee. And it was really, really exciting in the 90s there. And then, but being in the swamp is one of the most amazing home field advantages that you can have. When that swamp is rocking, that is a really tough place for an opposing team to play.
It is a tough place. And I've got to tell you, I got a story for everything. You know, I've got a nephew whose granddad played for the University of Florida football team and went on to play pro for Denver. His dad, which is my nephew by marriage, he played on the baseball team that went to the national championship. So my second nephew, or however he is, he's my nephew. He is a great ball player. He's got it. He's raised up Gator. He don't know there's another team in the entire world. So it's time to play college ball. He ends up playing for Florida State.
Oh, wow.
They recruited him. So he said, I said, what was it like putting on that Florida State helmet? You're Gator through and through. He said, I was excited to play Division I ball. I was excited to play for Florida State. But when I put that Florida State helmet on and looked in the mirror, I thought, what am I doing here? He said, Florida didn't even give me a look. He said, but I'm a proud Seminole.
Yeah, no, it's a good rivalry, and hopefully for the state. I mean, when people say, what is what needs to be accomplished, or what do you look at in Florida? And I think they're talking more about like policy, and we've accomplished what we promised. We're always looking to do more. But the one thing I say is, college football, right? When I was growing up, year after year, Florida teams were in the mix for the national championship. Florida State had a pretty good year a couple years ago, fell on their face this year. Florida has just been mediocre. I think they have a chance to be really good. And Miami had a chance to be in the playoff, and they blew it towards the end last year. They now have Georgia's quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I think Florida plays Miami this year. Obviously, Florida State always does. We have Alabama against Florida State in Tallahassee to open the season, which is that's going to tell a lot about Florida State. If they can hang with Alabama, that'll be a good sign for them. And then we have one of the games I'll probably be interested in going, Texas with Arch Manning at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium at the Swamp against the Gators. I think that's sometime in October. So that should be a really good, because I think Arch Manning will probably be the favorite for the Heisman Trophy. And I saw Peyton, a couple months ago, and I was just like, can Arch be better than you? And he's like, he could be. So, I mean, we'll see what happens.
Do you know, I'll look for you at that game, because I think that's the one that my buddy and I are going to go to this year. I try to go to a game, but it's hard to get in and out and watch the game because people like to talk and I like to talk. but there is this, as you said, there's this energy with football. But I want to make a comparison here. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Gator fan, but I've always respected Alabama whenever our man was coaching there. And when I saw Nick Saban coach, and he said, forget the score, it's the process. It's doing the right things at the right time all the time. That's why Nick Saban was arguably the best college coach ever. Well, I take that same analogy into government, and I want to come here with you and say, look, you do the right things at the right time, you push through, and people are safer, crime's lower, people want to move to Florida. You are the Nick Saban of government in Florida of doing the right thing.
Well, Coach Saban he's a part-time resident in Florida. Has had property for a while. And I'd always tell people, I'm like, the only chance that these Florida teams have is if Coach Saban retires, because I don't think there's any question. He's the best coach that's ever been in college football. And funny thing is, I think he makes more money as an analyst for ESPN. He actually does a really good job. That's not easy to do, to go from coaching to do that. And he's very good at that. But I think he probably makes more money doing that. But the one thing I will just say, because we're talking about the Gators and my kids are Seminole, so we've not pushed them in any direction. We're in Tallahassee, so we go to a lot of local games. my wife, my kids are obsessed with Florida State baseball. They're hosting a regional this
Oh,
weekend.
really?
They're going to be at every regional game, 100%. If they host a super regional, they'll be there. But that's just kind of how it evolved. But when we saw you at the game, the Miami game to start last year's football season, I told Mason, my son, and I told our girls, you got to give the Gators a chance. I'm not pushing you a different direction. Like, I want all the teams to do good. I'm governor. I'm not going to let people think. So we put Mason in a Tim Tebow jersey. We brought him on the field at the Swamp. We did the whole 9 yards. Like, you could not ask for a kid that just started first grade. You couldn't ask for anything more. And he just had, he want, no way. He's a null. He didn't even, it was like total rejection. He wouldn't do it. And so he's very rabid in terms of it. And my girls too are rabid with it. So we'll see. On the baseball, both Florida and Florida State are in the NCAA regionals. Last year, both of them made it to Omaha, and we went and cheered in the College World Series. And so we were able to see Florida State lost to Tennessee in a heartbreaker on the Friday night. Saturday night, there were tornadoes, so they postponed. So Florida's game didn't start till like 10:30 at night. So we're there at 10:30 for the first pitch. My kids fall asleep within like an hour, and that game went till like 1 a.m. And then we stayed for Florida State winning in the losers bracket. So we'll see. I think that it'd be good to have a team go back, but all eyes will be on some of these games here in the Sunshine State with college football coming up. And I agree, so much has changed with it. And I'm a big believer in the basic concept of NIL in the sense of if someone's selling Grady Judd merchandise, they can't just make money off you. I mean, if these universities are selling their jerseys,
Right.
then getting that is like normal. But I think what it's gone to, it went from that, which I think they should do, to now where they'll play a year and then they'll negotiate like money for others. And it's like they have more rights now than pro athletes do because the pro athletes will have multi-year agreements. So it's hard to follow the teams. And you don't know if a team has a good year. Okay, people may get drafted, but what about the rest? You could lose half your starters because of NIL and the transfer portal. And so there needs to be some sanity brought to that. I want the kids to be able to be compensated. People are making money off them, but you shouldn't just be able to transfer 4 or 5 times and basically be a uber free agent. I think it does sap interest from the sport.
Well, it's frustrating because as a head coach, you think you've got your team put together and you wake up and you find out overnight your guys went in the portal, 2 or 3 of them, and it's like, what's happening here? But tell me, is Mason going to be the next generation of baseball player?
So it's interesting. He is obsessed with baseball right now. He's also very good in golf. And I didn't do golf as a kid. I got him, so like it's just natural, right? And then he likes football a lot. But I think baseball is probably, he's very good fielder. He's a switch hitter, and he hustles. And so, but baseball is all about, you've got to be able to accept failure. You know, the best hitter in the world will still fail 65% of the time, right? And he's not quite accepted that there's a lot of failure in baseball. And it's like, if he'll hit a rocket and someone will catch it and he gets frustrated. I said, buddy, that's not, you gotta go and kind of do it. So we'll see what happens. But I told him on football, I was like, the easiest way to have a spot in football is kicking and punting. I was like, they always need a punter. They always need a kicker. And so we're in the front yard and he'll just kick footballs for an hour and just do it. Baseball, he's doing the same thing off the tee. Like we set up the tee to where he can hit it over the fence or try to hit it over the fence. So we kind of do like a home run derby with that. And then we take him on. He just started playing golf tournaments this year. So, a lot of these kids, I mean, yes, they were older than him, but I mean, these kids are good. I mean, they've had golf lessons and everything. And I've never given him, I just say, just hit it, man. Just hit it, grip it and rip it. So he still has the baseball grip on the golf club. And at some point we'll get him kind of a lesson to get him locked in on all that stuff. But another thing he really likes, all my girls and him, they like professional wrestling.
Do they really?
They really did. So we were, it's just something that they've really taken to. So it's interesting to see what the kids like or what they don't. Like our daughter just finished 2nd grade. She's doing soccer camp and she really likes soccer. she's got a good golf swing. I tell her, well, I'll take you out. I don't want to do it. I don't do it. Well, I'm not going to force them to do it if they don't want to do it. But some things they like, some things they don't. And then they go in cycles. When the Super Bowl ends, Mason immediately goes to baseball, like that. I mean, it's just like flipping a switch. And football's over, and then he focuses on baseball. When the football season starts, then he's got, baseball season still going on, World Series, all that as we get into the fall. But then you've got the football games, and then definitely November, December, January, he's really locked into football. So,
I came to the governor's mansion to visit with you one day, and as I walked in, it was early in the morning. There was home plate where Mason had been out in the yard, and I thought, here, the governor of the state of Florida, the governor's mansion, what's more totally real than your son's home plate still in the front yard from playing with him the evening before?
And if you go to the front door, you usually look on the left or right, and you've got gloves, balls, bats, footballs, golf clubs, whatever. But that front yard, there used to be this massive oak tree, and Hurricane Idalia knocked it out in 2023. And so, honestly, Idalia didn't do that much damage in Tallahassee compared to other places, but it took this tree down. And so they just had to get rid of it, which we would never have done on our own. But the fact that it happened, it gave a massive playing field there for them. So football, baseball, this other stuff, but it's fun. But well, listen, I want to thank you for chatting with us. We appreciate what you're doing down in Polk County. I think you've shown that leadership matters. Law and order matters, and you can do these things. I mean, all the problems that you see in all these other parts of the country, I think we've shown in Florida. I think you've shown as sheriff, you can take care of business. And when you do that, and when people see that you're fighting for them, that's why you've got all these people that want to be in Polk County. That's why you're winning with the 80%, 85% of the vote because you've delivered.
Well, I appreciate that. And as you know, you've done this at the state level. It's my team. I circle myself with the best and the brightest, and I encourage them, and I talk about technology, keeping people safe, treating people like you'd want your mother treated, delivering customer service with a sense of urgency. And as a result of my team, Governor, I'm able to do what I do, but I give them the credit. And on the state level, we couldn't keep Florida safe without a governor, without a legislature that stands firm and does not capitulate to what I call that woke, let the criminal loose left.
Yeah. And also just full disclosure with your team, but Polk County citizens. I mean, if a criminal is threatening them as sheriff, you've been very forthright about a little thing called the Second Amendment and their
Absolutely.
right to defend themselves.
The only thing better than owning one gun is to own two guns.
There you go. All right, Sheriff Grady Judd, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
All righty.
Enjoyed it.